of the Starbucks in Maple Ridge. Actually, if you somehow wanted to drive down here and share your thoughts with what's going on in the world today. So, thank you for joining me. I'm here in this amazing day of today, and I'm truly enjoying every single second and moment of it. Actually, what we were just looking at was a image of the sun, and it was breaking through, and then it looked quite amazing. And actually, as I turned on the camera, interestingly enough, the cloud moved over the amazing part, and yet it truly doesn't really stop what is amazing, because every moment of what I'm looking at right now in this frame on the cloud is beautiful, regardless of how it's framed. Well, framing it is what actually makes it a lot more beautiful than perhaps just looking up in the sky, because the whole entire sky right now is just cloud covered. And yet, when we put it within a frame, as I'm doing now, it changes it because we're condensing that aspect of the sky into a 9 by 16 frame. And that's therefore allowing us to focus more of our attention on all of the small details. And so, even when I'm looking at this frame right now, I'm noticing the luminous of the light that's going through some of the clouds and gray other places. Like, there's a lot more to actually focus on. But yet, I realized when we have a larger screen, such as a big screen TV, actually, interestingly enough, I recently brought my big screen TV out of storage, and my son and I are watching Pokemon now on it. And it definitely gives a different overall appreciation of the show, because when you're watching on a big screen TV or like in a movie theater, for example, there's so much screen that when our eyes are focusing, because we tend to, as Homo sapiens, focus on where our attention is drawn to. And so framing that in a smaller frame, as I do with my 9 by 16 Duno thing and moving portraits, I frame essentially our attention within a smaller captured screen. But yet, when we have those larger screens, our attention can easily get distracted. We might miss a lot of things. We might be watching a movie and something over on the right hand side of that big screen. You know, some people have these 80-inch TVs and such, but they can cause us to glance over and then miss perhaps some important sequence or scene that essentially ties together the whole movie, like that kiss, because we're looking at something else. And yet, yeah, I brought the big screen TV out simply just because, I feel we're at a stage where I'm going to be leaving it behind. So I might as well leave it where it was meant originally to be, perhaps. And yet I'm realizing more and more the things that we believed, or at least I believed, that harmed us. A lot of that stuff, I think, has moved on from harming us. It's moved on from affecting us. Things that we were worried about before, the chemtrails, the things in our food, and the different control mechanisms they used. A lot of people for such a long time have essentially lived in a state of fear of these things that we helped, in a sense, co-create. It's hard to imagine for most people to recognize how and why they could be responsible for some of the catastrophes or the disasters that have afflicted our planet. And yet, when we give our attention to them, when we focus on them in that little frame on your phone, for example, you're sitting there watching all of those, whether they're alternative news media on Rumble, there's a lot of propaganda from the Republicans essentially trying to say that they're giving you partial truths. Well, in a sense, they are giving you the truth that you want to hear, which is the truth that we've known for a very, very long time. And then they're mixing in that they're coming in with white horses and hats and all this other lovely stuff to announce to you that they're trying to save the day. And in one of my previous podcasts, I explained that before I even put up Candid Talks, I often would walk through the forest and I would ask myself, is the information that I'm seeing from all these different so-called freedom websites and freedom sites and channels on Rumble and wherever, are all these people, are they truly trying to essentially release us? Or are they keeping us on essentially a different hamster wheel? And what I recognized is that it was a different hamster wheel. It was a wheel because we had gotten to the edge of the web, as I've talked about, and we were moments away from being released. And so, what was devised by the so called demiurge, as I understand it, was that final level of keeping you within the matrix, within the system, within the illusion that we were less of control than we originally thought we had. And yet, going back, or I should say, flowing back to the ideas that the world has changed and there's a lot of things that had once removed our power. And yet we are every moment by moment regaining that power. But more importantly, as I said, when we have removed our attention upon those things that we believe are going to harm us, that they are less likely to harm us because we no longer empower them. And so, like, as I was walking to have my morning cup of coffee, I'm asking myself, is coffee bad for me? Or is it just part of what I'm requiring at this moment in time to perhaps stand against, or at least remain steadfast against all of these perpetrators and projections that have been casted upon me? I always find it interesting. Sometimes now I'm actually looking and I see people pop on. I see the view count go to 1 and then 0 and then 1 and 2 and then 0 and then 1 and 2 and 0. It's often interesting for me how people come and go so quickly. Like there just went another person. They see a video, might have interest to it. There's some clouds in the sky, but yet the most important part of this video to that person who just came on now is the things that I'm saying. It's not the clouds in the sky. Unfortunately, there was a very, very beautiful sky scene captured. But then, as I had said, just as I put the camera down and clicked on record, the clouds moved over to block it. So now it just looks like a big gray cloud. And yet it brought me to the idea of framing, or more importantly, reframing the situations that we find ourselves in. See, we can look at the control of the fake puppet governments, or we can look at the control of corporations have had on our lives and our livelihoods and our families. We can see them as the monstrosities that they have essentially become, or we can therefore turn it around, reframe it, and recognize that, oh, well, we were giving our power away because we were like the movie Wall-E. Have you ever seen that movie? That movie is basically about how there is so much garbage on the planet that in order to save humanity, all of the people get on luxury spaceship, and they, like a cruise ship, for example, where everything is automated, and then they fly away off to essentially become these big, obese, overweight consumers, a true example of consumers, all the while their planet, or our planet, Earth, remains in a constant state of non life due to the corruption of all the garbage that was left behind. See, there's a lot of people that still, even around me, are living in that state of, you know, constant using things, using people, using devices, driving these large ass trucks around with one person in the cab. When the prices of gas supposedly are extremely high, they're driving around in gas guzzlers. There goes another one of them. Like I see in my city, anyways, there are so many people with 4x4 trucks, even though the gas and the diesel, like the diesel here has jumped almost to $3 a liter. Now you switch that over to gallons, and that's an explanation of why the food cost is high, not because of the gas increasing in the sense, but that the cost of diesel, which is what moves our food along. I want to stop right here, and I want to thank the, I don't know, 15 people so far that have come and stayed for literally 10 seconds and left. I see that, as I mentioned yesterday in my podcast, as simply people that are coming on and then they're leaving quickly, showing little interest in it, in the podcast that I'm doing. And then they are leaving, therefore distracting the algorithm from perhaps sharing this with more people. There comes the sun right now. Isn't that beautiful? See, just that little bit of waiting, and all of a sudden the clouds are parting, and that beautiful sun, which I have been sitting here now for 10 minutes to see this little bit of beauty, this little spark of light that's making its way through the clouds. So we'll go back onto reframing. As I said, reframing is an important tool. It's a tool that allows us to redefine our own personal experiences, to look and see it differently. Oh, look at, hey, is that the sun or the moon? Yeah, that's the moon above the sun. That's pretty interesting. Anyways, or that's the sun and the moon, whatever. Yeah, so back to what I was saying. So reframing is taking what has happened and putting it in a positive light. Now, you can call this spinning it if you'd like, and sometimes spinning it is all right. When it's not trying to make the bad seem okay, reframing it is basically looking for the silver lining, looking for what could be good, what was beneficial, what positive attributes came as a result of this once perceived negative concern that we had. And, there's a great example when I was reading this book and they were reframing the amount of radiation that a banana gave to us. See, in this book, they explained that the banana itself gave us a little bit of radioactivity every time we ate a banana, because bananas themselves supposedly are genetically modified, meaning that there isn't an actual real banana now. What we have is a genetically modified version of it. That's why all the bananas seem to come out almost picture perfect. But what this book was asserting was that having radiation within the banana was acceptable because it essentially made us stronger. It gave us little spurts of radiation so that we could therefore perhaps withstand the larger amounts of radiation that perhaps flew around in our skies from whatever plants that were blown up, or whatever other plants that they purposely blew up for whatever reasons. And that all of these little bits of radiation is what allowed us to get to a point where right now we live in a very radioactive world. And what I mean by that is the world we live in is surrounded by so many different forms of radiation that we really have no clue, from microwaves to Wi-Fi waves, to cellular waves, using different types of frequencies that perhaps aren't in alignment with who we are, to the distortion fields that are created by any and all of the electronics, all of these electronic fields, and they're all essentially in a way distorting or interacting with our own field. And should we not have had that banana, for example, we may not have the resistance or the shielding or the experience of moving ourselves through those larger or more distortive radio frequencies that have affected us. All around us, we have fields, and it's just amazing how many times people will often have pains or whatever as they're moving about their house, and yet it could simply be a field that is coming even from a neighbor's house or from one of your electronic devices or Bluetooth. See, one of the things that I highly recommend that everyone does is when you go to sleep at night, power off your cell phone. It doesn't actually fully turn off, and yet it will turn off one of or a few of the 7 antennas that are on it. It'll definitely protect you from the abundance of notifications that are waking you up. Yet it will also alleviate perhaps some of the distortions within your field. Power off the Wi-Fi, turn off the router, unplug the computer, unplug essentially as much as you can when it comes to home electronics. Having those powered up, well, first of all, they pull in a little bit of electricity, meaning that they're constantly using a lot of electricity. So if you're trying to maintain a lower hydro bill, for example, then not having that little bit of consumption. I got my hydro bill all the way down to $35 because I stopped using the big screen TV. I stopped having my computer and other devices plugged in overnight. I powered off what I could, so even my phone and my Bluetooth speakers, they wouldn't be using energy while I was sleeping, so therefore I wouldn't have to replace that. To me, that's being a lot more, we'll call it electrically, I don't know. I'm being more cautious, not cautious, but aware of what I'm or how I'm utilizing the resources that I currently have access to. And so, yeah, doing all of these little things can definitely help one to better perhaps utilize the resources that they do have. And then, of course, as I had mentioned, turning off all of those fields reduces the amount of radiation that you even have to put up with. Our bodies are amazing healing factories, and they have the ability to heal itself at an amazing abundance or an amazing rate, anyways. Did you know that our body, every cell of our body regenerates at a certain time? Like there's different supposed time frames that we'll say for different parts or different organs of the body, but things like our liver, that they actually regenerate. That means that people who have scars and sicknesses on their liver, they don't actually have to keep that. As well as if you're treating your body, all parts of your body, even things like your skin or your hair or even your teeth, they all have the ability to regenerate. I apologize. Once again, the Matrix has brought in a large, essentially, bricks money truck to sit idle beside I recording this. Well, what we're talking about here is if you listen to the whole entire audio, it would lead up to what I was talking about now. I appreciate that you definitely made a comment, Con, yet using the F word is not really required. And as I said, if you're listening to the whole audio, and I apologize for me having to speak louder right now, this truck has become quite loud. Actually, I'm going to see if I can maybe move away from it a little bit. But what we're talking about is reframing. And reframing, as I had said, is taking a situation and recognizing it could be seen and utilized for a very different reason. And so on the podcast title, I put up something cute like, have you caught them all? You know, that can mean different things for different people. Perhaps it could simply mean right now, as a temporary placeholder for the thumbnail, I put up a whole bunch of videos that I have done. Well, have you caught them all? Perhaps could mean, have you watched all these videos? You know, I do create my videos because they're like little children for me, like as if I was a parent. And I truly do hope that all of my little creations, and I'll call them co-creations because God helped me create them. God helped and guided me. And I sometimes could, while I was choosing pictures, for example, my hand would be guided to essentially utilize or incorporate one picture over another, recognizing that, you know, I have my ideas, but my co-creator source decided, or he had chosen that we were going to use this one this time. So all of these videos for me are like children, and I definitely encourage everyone to share their attention on them because I have incorporated so many different, we'll call them upgrades or we'll call them activations. I always like the word activation. And these activations, just by watching the video, just by experiencing it, not even by fully understanding it, there's an appreciation or an activation that is engaged. It's kind of similar to reading Shakespeare. You may not understand all of what Shakespeare's saying. You may need Cole's Notes or Shakespeare for Dummies books or some sort of other teacher to teach. But yet, just by reading that book, and I mean the plays of William Shakespeare or whatever the guy's name really was, or if it was a woman as well. But just by interacting with those books, even having those books, you are gaining value from that. And so what is this podcast about? It's about sharing information, the wisdom and knowledge that I have experienced, that I have obtained, that I have had through insights and cognitions, direct reflections, experimental cannabis, like different experiences where I was able to make connections. And like I said, I sincerely apologize. There's actually no reason why a gas guzzling truck has to come and stop to collect a little bit of cash from Starbucks, leave the engine running and essentially polluting our environment. That is just something that the Matrix is allowing, hoping, or perhaps encouraging distortion or me to lose my mind. And yet I'm not going to. I'm going to continue on sharing the information regardless of whether or not it's received by anyone or everyone. And however it turns out, I'm here to stay because this world this world is getting better. As I said, we are learning to see things different. The illusions that we have been restricted behind are fading. They're coming to an end. Politicians are being discovered for who they actually are. And they are puppets. They are constructs of this reality that we live in that were utilized as apparent lawmakers when what was truly happening, the experiences, or you can say the bylaws or the governing mandates that we were locked behind, they were far removed beyond that which our politicians would even have access to. You can imagine it more like a script writer writes a script and then tells a person what to say. And even if they had some sort of convention or parliamental meeting, that a lot of those things were scripted as well, that people were assigned sides of any sort of argument and then they were told what position to take and then what roles to take within there. And when we recognize that the reality of why so many things that appeared to be common sense, they didn't happen. And when we scratch our heads and wonder why, and yet when we gain perhaps a larger awareness that things aren't really the way that we imagined them to be, even all of the so-called government help programs that many people are caught in, whether it's EI or a pension plan or a 401k or whatever the thing in America is called, or, child care help, like, or subsidies or welfare, you just name it. All of those programs are essentially there to keep us, like free medical. Free medical's not free when they're handing you over to doctors who get mad at you because you question what they say because they're sitting on a computer Googling cures for an issue that you have or you feel that you have. So free medical is not really free because, that guy's being paid irregardless and he's sitting in on a computer. And I had this actually happen to me where the family doctor sat down in front of a computer and he searched on the internet for ideas of nutrition. And he printed off a website and gave that to me as in what I should do to improve my nutrition. That's not really free medical. That's a waste of time because I literally could have done that myself. And even there got to be a point where I was ordering my own medical tests because my doctor couldn't actually tell me what was wrong with me. And so these different types of programs that we see as government help, government aid, and there's so many different versions of them, they are portions of our own tax money being given back to us. And, that's not necessarily benefiting us, especially when we don't play by their rules. We are therefore forced into. Okay, the thing is, Khan, I literally just talked to you, but I can't sit there and look at a screen when I let you know. Oh, interestingly enough, funny enough, the actual camera changed its angle. But I can't let I had to move the camera and I literally just continued talking. So you're saying that American politicians are puppets of Israel. No, what I'm saying, Khan, is that all politicians are working for the same group of families. It doesn't matter whether you're a politician in America. It doesn't matter whether you're a politician in Israel or Iran or Venezuela or America. All of those politicians, they're all working for the exact same person. They're all playing different sides. Do you ever remember that person? Do you ever remember that person on Batman? It was his name was Two-Face. He played as a mayor and then he had like an evil side to him. So I envision, or I'm aware of, that it was like that these politicians, they essentially are actors. And if you look at the actor who leads the Ukrainian government, he actually was a daytime soap opera actor. So he was hired out of, acting. And a lot of the politicians, like you can even look at Arnold Schwarzenegger, he went from an actor to a politician. There's a lot of others who go from that type of acting and then into playing a role. And what politicians really are is they're sitting there reading a script that someone has read for them. Now, if we watch a lot of the political movies and, Netflix's that movie that had that guy in it, I forgot what it was, but something to do with cards, the House of Cards or something like that. We were essentially programmed to believe that the government would tell the scriptwriters what to write, and then the reader, which is the politician, or you can say the puppet, would therefore then read what was being said. Now, I've come to the understanding through the GIA report, and that's the Global Intelligence Agency report, what I highly recommend that everyone invest their energy and attention on. And it depicts or exposes that our governments are a tool of forces and sources that are higher above than the governments. And so while we're sitting there and we're hoping that these governments are going to do things differently, and every year they constantly do the same things the same way. When I was growing up, I constantly had my parents complain and say, "Oh, hey, we voted this person in, and yet they continue to break their promises and oh, we'll get them next time." And next time rolled around and the exact same things happened, that all of these so-called platforms that a party decides they're going to run with, they eventually break all of those promises anyways. And this is something that is honestly in every political sector that I've ever heard from all of the people from all over the world, that governments they aren't necessarily for the people, by the people. And not only that, they seem to honestly be selected as if those who would choose to abide by their controllers or their puppet masters are more likely to therefore be put into power, to be put into that seat of, you can say illusion of power, because when it comes down to it, they're required to do what they've been told to do. And yet we sit here wondering, why are they passing bills that many Canadians or anyone in the world would oppose? And therefore it's easier to see. So, but yet, even when we look at, I'll get to your question, Con, in a second. Even when we look at what they've done to us, we can even look at that and reframe it. Because the reason why I do these podcasts is, more importantly than sharing the information, it's to release positive vibes and information, and therefore help us bring up our resonant frequency so that we can release ourselves. Healing is one of the things that's going to move all of us forward. Releasing all those traumas that we had in the past are what's going to bring it forward. And while I can answer questions like the one I'll answer in a second to Con, there's definitely more important things on the table when it looks for each individual person. And so he says, okay, let me ask you a question. Do you support the war in Iran? Okay, I support zero wars anywhere. All war is orchestrated. All war has a purpose. There's a reason, and there's someone who profits behind all wars. There's a company called Shell, and I'm sure you've heard of that company. They essentially fueled both sides of World War II. There's other companies that are American, supposedly, like Ford, for example, and there's other German companies that they supported both sides of the war. And that continues to go on with any type of situation we have. I see the war in Iran as a act against God, because for us, for any reason, to harm another Homo sapien is a sin. It doesn't matter whether or not your political leader or your religious leader told you to get a sword or a knife or a gun or a bomb and blow someone or something up. All war, all taking of all life, I see as a sin when it comes to anything other than protecting your own personal family. your own, to save innocence is the only excuse. And yet to engage war in another person's country, to drop a bomb, hurt or injure anyone, is not something that I would ever condone, nor would I ever support. But more importantly, all of those wars are orchestrated. They are put up there to get us, the rest of us in the world, engaged within a distortion, to get us to, just get distracted, to justify why the cost of gas, for example, is higher. It's because, oh, there's a war somewhere, and so therefore I must do my own part and pay. Unfortunately, that doesn't fly with me either. So I'm going to leave it at that because I think that I got a lot of what I wanted to say out. And I hope that perhaps we can reframe things more often so that we therefore can release the traumas that we have had, regardless of the experience that we are having, so that we can move forward into a state of more enlightenment. And just as the sun is trying to get through the clouds, I see the Homo sapiens, that we are doing everything and anything just to peek through into reality. And this whole podcast, if you are still here, Con, was all about trying to share and ripple information, energy, and love worldwide, from Bangladesh to Iran to Israel to Canada, America, all over South America, to China, to Japan, to everywhere. So, yeah, I saw, Ryan, you had said something that you're from the region that I was talking about. And so I wasn't sure exactly which region. I apologize. I only have this little small phone. And so it's sometimes a challenge to actually see the phone and then continue the talk. And, anyways, that's the last person dropping out. So thank you so much for sharing your time and attention with me. And I really enjoyed engaging with the viewers in the conversation. So perhaps I'll focus more on what people are saying next time and have more of a conversation. Thank you so much, Con, for your interaction. I definitely appreciate all of the insights and your questions, honestly. So I hope that you'll have the opportunity to perhaps to go back and listen to the whole entire thing, because everything is interconnected. Everything that we do, the synchronicities have reasons. Coincidences aren't really coincidences. Often they're messages. So yeah, I definitely appreciate your message and your interaction. Thank you so much to Ryan and Con for engaging with me in this conversation. And I look forward to talking to you both more. Have a great day.